Today's guest has built an entire movement around one simple truth. It all comes down to the courage to take a single step. I'm Kelly Callahan Poe, host of the Marketing Moms podcast. Today's episode is called Your Epic Career Starts with One Step Forward with Zander Sprague. Zander is an award-winning speaker, author, and licensed professional clinical counselor who helps people find the courage to take the first step towards an epic life. Drawing on 20 plus years in the corporate world, a background in mental health counseling, and deep personal loss, he provides both professional insight and lived experience in his work. He's the author of 3 books, including his #1 Amazon bestseller, Epic Begins with One Step Forward. Welcome, Zander.
Oh, thank you so much, Kelly. It's just such an honor to be here.
I want to start with a difficult question, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
You've spoken openly about a personal tragedy that really is a moment that changed your life in a significant way. How did that event shape your purpose and lead to the work that you do today?
Well, what you're referring to is 29 years ago, my older sister, Lucy, was murdered. And, there were many things I thought I might deal with in my life. But to be honest, murder was not one of them. And obviously, when it happened, it was devastating. But through that loss, I learned a couple of things. First and foremost, with any kind of loss that we have, be it someone dies, loss of a relationship, loss of a job or whatever, we have to find the strength within ourselves. It's great to have support, but you have to figure out how you're going to walk down this path of grief. And I've been doing that for 29 years. More importantly, I discovered that as a sibling survivor, meaning I lost a sibling, that there's not a lot of resources out there. So I've written 2 books about sibling loss, one for siblings and one for parents to understand their living child's grief. Because my experience and that of lots of other sibling survivors is parents don't really understand what's going on with us. So I really am an advocate for raising awareness for sibling survivors and to help them.
But beyond that, you made a career change, correct?
I did. I spent most of my time in the corporate world as a technical instructor, but I taught people how to use software, and I was actually kind of good at it. But I sort of had this moment where I was like, why am I learning and teaching someone else's stuff when I know what I want to teach? And so I started really leaning into helping sibling survivors, working to create awareness for sibling survivors. And like anyone's career, stuff evolves. You do something, you're like, hey, that's great, but I want to do it better. And I like to say that I'm just a little busier because I'm doing some additional work in memory of Lucy. And I have to say that it's really rewarding to do good things in Lucy's memory versus just focusing on the dot that was the end of her life.
I appreciate you sharing that story. Your book, the word epic, means more than the imagery that it conjures up. Can you talk to me about what that word actually means to you and how you've created it as an acronym?
Absolutely. For me, first of all, I love the word epic. It to me just personifies like just so much fun and greatness and stuff and big things that are happening, even if they are like what I call epic unexpected, those things that really sort of change how we're going. But epic for me stands, every pilgrimage includes commitment. And when I was thinking about what does epic stand for anything? And I was like, yes, because any of our epic journeys that we want to go on, be it maybe write a book, run a marathon, travel somewhere, change your job. That is a pilgrimage. Now, I know some people may go, oh, pilgrimage and associated with some kind of religious journey. But for me, whatever I've been doing, be it writing my books or running marathons or just doing the work I do, I'm on a pilgrimage. I understand where I would like to get to. And in order to do that, it really does include commitment. You have to be committed to it. And any of us, if we've taken on some new challenge, you're like, I know where I want to get to, but I really have to be committed to get there.
Well, I want to walk through some of those steps. You say that choosing the goal is often the hardest part. Why do so many people struggle to get clear on what they really want?
Kelly, I think firstly, people think that they have to have everything figured out before they start. But I think that that's a fallacy. And I'll give you just a simple everyday example. When you woke up this morning, Kelly, did you have all the answers to all the questions that you'll get today?
No,
Did that stop you from getting up and starting your day?
absolutely not.
No. And yet, when people want to do some big thing that they've dreamed of, right? It comes down to those things that we all have said a gazillion times. Someday I'd like to, and fill in the blank. I'll say write a book, run a marathon, travel somewhere, start a family, whatever. Well, it's got to start somewhere. And it is good to understand where you think you'd like to get to. But as is the case in life, sometimes where we think we want to go and where we end up are different places. I find that all the time in my mental health counseling. A client will come in and say, I'd like to work on this. But through that journey, we discovered that that actually wasn't where they wanted to go. There was somewhere else, but they just didn't know. But it didn't stop them from starting that. I think sometimes the goal is hard because it seems unattainable. But I have things in my book and stuff that I coach people about how to get through that.
You also talk about the difference between a goal, an intention, and a dream.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we all have intentions. I'd like to lose some weight. I need to start making this change. Okay, but you're not committed to it. And psychologically speaking, if we're not ready to commit to something, we're simply not going to do it. And sometimes it's the pain point isn't high enough for you to make the change. Let's take something that lots of people struggle. They struggle with their weight. Until it gets to a point where you go, this is unacceptable. I need to change how I'm eating and the amount of exercise. The intention to lose weight is great, but actually committing and going, now I'm going to do this, that's part of the difference. Also understanding that the journey, we don't know. There are going to be detours along the way. Okay, no problem, right? Think about when you go on a vacation. You don't know everything that's going to happen. There's going to be some unexpected things. Maybe the rental car isn't available. Maybe it's not supposed to rain, but it rains some of the days. Now what are we going to do? We were doing an outdoor activity. But that doesn't stop your vacation from happening.
Earlier, you said that the word someday, and I've heard you say that someday is a very challenging word and kind of self-defeating word. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I think someday is so indirect, right? It's like, oh, tomorrow, right? But tomorrow never comes, okay? Because when we get to tomorrow, it's today. So again, it comes down to committing to whatever change it is, whatever epic journey you want to go on. And here's the thing. When we think about these epic journeys, and I'll take writing my books, okay?
Yeah.
First of all, let me be honest. It blows my mind that I've written 3 books because I'm a talker, not a typer. If you'd asked me in college if I would write a book, I'd be like, heck no.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like writing, but I love talking. I'm really good at talking, if you haven't already guessed. But I figured out when I sat down to write my books, I had the idea for my first book called Making Lemonade, Choosing a Positive Pathway After Losing Your Sibling. And I sat down to try and write it. And it wasn't going well. So I'm like, all right, I'll get that. Well, I figured out that let me use my talking, and I dictated it. I got it transcribed. Then I had something that I had some clay to work with, and I was able to formulate the book. The someday that came in, that was one of the somedays. Someday I'll write a book. So I got the book written. But then I sat on it for 5 years because I was afraid to put it out, because I had all kinds of feedback in school that my writing was okay, but not great.
Yeah.
And as is the case, lots of us believe negative things that have been told to us, and we don't believe the positive things that are told to us. And so I was telling people I was coming out with a book, but I was no more coming out with a book than I was flying to the moon. And I got tired of saying that, and I didn't want to be that person that 20 years later said, oh, I'm coming out with a book. And people go, yeah, right. So I got brave. I swallowed hard. I put on my big boy pants, and I released the book. And an amazing thing happened. People from around the world were writing me, telling me that they found the book helpful, that people liked it. Now, for the first 6 months, in my mind, I'm like, really? Because I really would have believed more if they told me it wasn't worth the paper it was written on than they liked the book and it was helpful. So that's one of those things, that feeling, that imposter syndrome, right? That will keep us at someday. Oh, someday I'll do it because I'm not qualified to do that. Kelly, in my career, I have had jobs that I had no right or business having. I got jobs because I believe in myself. And somehow, something that I created that came from me was one of the things that I didn't believe in most, which is ridiculous. But I got brave and I put it out there. And then I'm like, oh, you want to know what? That wasn't nearly as hard as I anticipated it would be. And in fact, it was actually an incredibly positive experience.
So once you've chosen your goal, let's say just for the purposes of our discussion, writing the book, right?
Sure.
How do you turn that dream into reality? You have a set of guidelines.
I think structure is our friend. And a lot of adults go, oh, I don't like structure. But let me tell you, from a mental health standpoint, structure makes us feel comfortable. And we want to feel comfortable. Yes, we're going to have to step out of our comfort zone. But if we create structure, it makes it so much easier. In my book, I talk about the pizza analogy. When you eat a pizza, you could roll the whole thing up and try and eat the whole thing at once. But normally we eat it one slice at a time, one bite at a time. Now, the only exception to that is if there happen to be some adolescent boys around and you actually want more than one piece of pizza, then you really do have to eat as quickly as possible, because if you don't, it will be gone.
Yes.
I know, because I was one of those adolescent boys. But anyway, but structure is, I think that's one of the key things. I wrote an outline for what I thought I wanted my chapters to be. Then I worked one chapter at a time. Why? Because that's how you have to do it. And, one paragraph at a time. When we break it down into bite-sized pieces, it gets so much easier. And it's manageable, right? Lots of us cook. If you don't know how to cook something, you follow a recipe. All right, do this, then do this, then do this. Although you may be a little stressed about messing up measurements, or that you didn't bake it right, or you didn't cook it long enough, or whatever. In general, you're not as stressed as if you just said, all right, I want to make a lemon meringue pie, but I've never made it, and I'll just sort of try and figure it out, right? Probably not going to be too successful. And anything like writing a book, if you don't write an outline, something we learned in school, before you write an essay, write an outline so you understand and organize your thoughts.
The other thing that you talked about that I thought was interesting and an easy way to remember this concept was the British Army's 7 Ps.
Yes. The prior proper planning prevents piss poor performance. And I think that's true. If you look at people who do really complex things, a surgeon, most surgeons on a complex surgery have planned out exactly what they're going to do. Yes, along the way there are things that change, but they understand. And I can say I'm grateful that if I had to have surgery, that the surgeon has thought about what he or she wants to do and how they're going to proceed with my operation. And so I think, prior proper planning. Think about what you want to do. But here's the thing, do not be rigid about it, because things change. I'll give you a perfect example. You mentioned I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor. I live in California. I needed 3,000 hours of internship. I finished that in February of 2020. I was all excited. I'm going to go take the exam. I'm going to get licensed. I'm going to go out. I'm going to do this stuff. About 3 weeks later, the pandemic hit and I couldn't do anything. Basically, I could leave my house, but I wasn't leaving my house because I had no idea what was going on. But even if I left my house, I couldn't go give speeches or anything. I couldn't take the exam because everything was shut down.
Yeah.
And it was during that time where I came up with the idea for Epic Begins with One Step Forward. I had lots of time. I'd gone, sort of processed through all the things I hadn't had time to think about. And I was thinking about my life. And I was like, I've done some pretty epic things in my life that I never expected to do. Write books, run a marathon, travel to many places in the world. And I thought about, well, how did that all begin? Well, it literally begins with one step forward. I just did one step. And this isn't a big secret. That first step is often not nearly as difficult as we anticipated it would be.
Let's talk about failure.
Yeah. Failure is part of the journey. We are going to fail at things. We try not to. No one wants to fail at things. But it is going to happen. And because I love analogies and use analogies all the time, let me use this. In baseball, you make it into the Hall of Fame if you have a lifetime batting average of over 300, which is in and of itself incredible. But if we look at it in real life, that means that you have a 30% success rate of trying stuff. So let me apply to just everyday life. Let's say there's 9 hours between work and family and personal stuff that you're doing. And for you to have a Hall of Fame day, you only have to get 3 hours right. Hall of Fame day, 3 hours. I don't think that's a particularly high bar any of us to achieve. All right, if I'm working for 8 hours and I get like 2.5 hours correct, I just had a great day. Makes it seem pretty easy. Look, as an entrepreneur, I have tried stuff and failed. I don't want to fail, but I do accept that is part of it. I'm learning from stuff. Kelly, I have a question. Have you ever bought a software for your business that you thought would really help you, and it turns out it just wasn't the right tool for you?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I've been a generous person. I've bought software over the years that I thought was going to help me, contact management, productivity, whatever. And it's not that it's bad software. It's just not the right tool for me.
Yeah.
And I don't see that as a failure. I see it as I tried something and that wasn't the way to do it. Let me learn from that.
And you learn more from your failures than you do your successes.
Absolutely. If you've ever read The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle, he talks about the greatest learning happens when we struggle the most. And I really believe in that. If you do something and just master it right away, there's actually not a lot of learning. But if you are trying to learn something and you're just sort of struggling your way through it, when you finally master it, you actually have probably really mastered whatever that is, because you've laid down all kinds of a super highway of how to do this. Kelly, do you play any sports, tennis? I don't know. What do you like to do that took some time to learn how to do?
My main focus is probably yoga. I've been doing
yoga,
it for 25, 30 years.
All right. So with yoga, when you first started, you might have had a hard time holding particular poses.
Yeah.
But now you don't, because you practice that. Your body and your muscles know how to do that. You know where to put your feet and your hands if you're happening to using your hands, so that you get the pose right. I know I've done yoga over the years, and it's amazing where I think I'm doing the pose right, and the teacher comes up and adjusts you just a tiny bit, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's how that's supposed to feel. And that's great. Once you learn that, you're like Daniel Coyle says, you're laying down the super highway of how to do that, and then you just know how to do it. There's less brain involved. Let me take something a lot more common. Remember when you first got your license, it was exhausting to drive. Why? Because you were concentrating on everything, every single street sign, what every single car was doing. Now, years later, there's so much of driving that is really unconscious.
Yeah.
You see the street, you see the speed limit sign, you see street signs, you see the cars. Because there's muscle memory, you know how to do it. You're able to disengage from that because you know what to do.
Back to the 97-3 rule. I really
I
love
that.
that
I
because
love my 97-3 rule, I have to say. The 97-3, look, I am a firm believer that most days, 97% of our day is good, and up to 3% isn't good. Yes, obviously there are days and sometimes multiple days where that 3% is much larger, okay? But in general, 97% of your day is good. And yet, when we talk about our day, we seem to completely ignore that 97 and only talk about that 3%.
Yeah.
And when I was doing my internship, a lot of my clients had academic challenges. And I wanted to really come up with a solid way for them to understand, to focus more on what was going right and not just what was going wrong. Here, I'm going to ask you a question here, Kelly. I love being interactive. In high school, what was your least favorite subject? Math, there you go. I have a question. If you got a 97 on a math test, how would you have felt?
Oh, I'd be thrilled.
Yeah, you tell your friends, you tell your parents, I also agree with math. I would have been ecstatic. Would you have been complaining about the 3 points you didn't get?
No.
No, absolutely not. You would be like, oh my God, I got a 97. Right? So you're focused on not what you didn't get right, but the amount that you did.
Yeah.
Why are we every day only focusing, oh, Kelly, how was your day? Well, the internet went down for a half an hour, and it's not that you don't recognize it, but there's so many other things that have already gone right. Look, we were sort of talking about mortality at the beginning. Let me put it this way. You and I both woke up this morning. I didn't doubt that I would wake up, but hey, that's a really great way to start the day. You know what I mean? So let's focus on what is going right. Acknowledge what isn't going right. But remember, there's so much more of your day that is going well. And yes, it is the small things, waking up, you made the coffee right. You made it on time to your 8 a.m. podcast. These are all things that are going right so far. I talk with my clients all the time. Let's focus on what is going right. Yes, we'll talk about what isn't going right, but it should not be the sole focus of our day.
I need to repeat that to my husband so then when I'm telling him about my day, he can remind me.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important because I think we do sort of get into that, what is wrong? And look, sadly, all of the information that we get, all the news we get, just tells us everything that's wrong, right? I sit there and say the news is fire, flood, or blood, right? There's just repeated, there was a house fire, this business got robbed, there was a huge blizzard, there was a tornado. And yes, that's important. But you want to know what? There's so much more good going on. We got to remind ourselves that, there is so much more good going on.
I think also when you've been through such a challenging personal tragedy, or anyone has. I lost my father a year and a half ago. And it wasn't a tragic event. He was old. But regardless, that ... that you talk about, the mortality, makes you think about your own mortality and makes you think about the area in between, right? In between the dates. And are you living the life that you really should be living? And I think it really reorients yourself to be braver and to want to take that extra step, because you know what? If you don't, you're going to regret it.
Absolutely. And look, I know it's cliche to say, but look, we got one time on this merry-go-round that is life. What are you going to do with that? Right? Yeah, look, we all have days where we're tired, we're unmotivated, we don't do everything that we could have done today. That's okay. Coulda, woulda, shoulda will derail you, right? Yeah. I could have done this, I should have done this, I would have done this. Well, I didn't. So instead of getting stuck there, I can acknowledge it, but I can move on and say, okay, how am I going to correct that? How am I going to change that tomorrow?
Any other final epic tips for professionals to move forward in their careers?
Don't be afraid. Okay, I've made career changes. Honestly, I was a quality assurance engineer, a software engineer. I spent most of my time as a technical instructor. I got hired by companies and I had to learn their software because I didn't know it before I went in. And I had to turn around and teach it and answer questions about it. And so there was a lot of pressure on me. And there was a lot of times I didn't know because I just didn't have the experience yet. But I wasn't afraid of that. And I just don't let fear be there. I think there are two words that are really, really important when we're on our epic journey. Not yet. Not yet is so important. There's so much optimism. We were talking about writing a book.
Yes.
Writing a book it's not just writing the book. The editing process can be very long and arduous and, a dirty secret people don't talk about. With all of my books, when the books actually were published, I didn't actually want to look at my own book for about 6 weeks. Why? Because I had just read my whole books at least 6 or 7 times. Now think about one book, you read it 6 or 7 times back to back to back to back. Or you're like, hold on, let me pick that up. Even your most favorite book, you're not like, okay, let me read it cover to cover 6 times.
Yeah.
So people would say, has your book come out? Not yet. It's coming out, but if I say no, there's such a final stop sign there. And not yet says, I'm working on it. If someone's a freshman in college, we don't go up and go, do you have your degree yet? Why? Because we understand that there's a process for them to go through. Someone would be like, no, I'm a freshman. I've got 4 years left to earn this degree. Maybe you do it a little faster, but the fact of the matter is it's not like you enter college and instantly get your degree.
Correct.
Well, in life, why don't we give that same grace and go, yeah, it does take time. You were talking about your yoga. You were not a yoga master right off. It took time.
And I still haven't mastered crow pose.
Exactly. Exactly. Look, I'll be honest. I have more of a toppling tree than I have an actual tree pose.
Oh, I can do the tree. I'm good at the tree.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Kelly. Really making me feel good here. I'm a giant redwood tipping over. But yet, not yet should be your companion. Whatever your epic journey is, not yet says, I'm working on it. We are all works in progress. Every day we learn something, right? Sometimes it's something that you're like, well, that's not the way to do it. But that's okay. Detours happen. What are you going to do with that?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your personal story today, Zander, and your professional insights. And I hope that we all can learn to focus on all of our epic strengths in the future. We will provide links to your website, your book, and your contact information in the transcript. Don't forget to subscribe and share. And thanks for joining.
Thank you so much. And I'd just like to finish with, remember, epic choices lead to the epic life that you want.
Excellent. Thank you.